welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's get right to it. What if I told you that in your entire organization, your whole company, there's really only one thing holding you back? Just one. Today, we're putting on our consultant hats and diving deep into the theory of constraints. Trust me, it's a framework that is absolutely going to change how you look at, well, every. So let's kick things off with something we all know, but maybe don't really think about in a business context. You've heard it a million times. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. It's so simple, right? But this one idea is the key to everything. See, your business, your processes, they're all just chains. And the crazy thing is, the overall strength, your performance, it has nothing to do with your strongest people or your fastest machines. Nope, it's all determined by that one single weakest part. And here's the kicker. Spending time, money, and effort trying to improve any other link, it's a complete waste. All right, here's the game plan. We're going to break this all down, piece by piece. We'll start with the big idea, the core philosophy, and then get right into the practical tools you can actually use to make a difference. Okay, first up, if we're all about strengthening that chain, then job number one has to be finding that one big bottleneck. So let's get into it. This is the core concept, and it's a real paradigm shift. You know, the best way to think about this is with a simple garden hose. Imagine you've got a kink in it. You can turn the water on full blast at the spigot, right? But it doesn't matter. The amount of water coming out is totally limited by that one single kink. That is your constraint. And the whole idea behind the theory of constraints, or TOC, is to give you a method for finding that kink and, fixing it. It's all about stopping us from wasting energy on everything else and putting a laser focus on the one thing that's actually going to make a difference. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. This is a game changer. We're all conditioned to look for physical problems, right? A slow machine, a person who needs more training. But most of the time, that's not it. The real constraint, the real bottleneck, is usually a policy, some rule, some metric that's been around forever that nobody even thinks to question. These invisible constraints, they are often the most powerful and the most damaging things holding a company back. Okay, so if we're going to focus on the constraints, we have to change how we keep score. Because let's be honest, traditional accounting metrics, they can be super misleading. Things like machine efficiency or cost per part can actually make you do the wrong thing. They push you to optimize individual pieces instead of the whole system. So we need a new financial framework, one that's tied directly to the real goal, which is, you guessed it, making money. First up, throughput. And this is simple. It's the rate at which your system generates money through sales. That's the key part. It's not about how many widgets you make. It's about how fast you turn those widgets into cash from a paying customer. If you haven't sold it, it's not throughput, period. Next, we've got inventory. Now, your accountant might call this an asset, but in the world of TOC, it's a liability. I love this analogy. Think of inventory as cash that's been frozen solid in a giant block of ice. Yeah, the value is in there somewhere, but you can't spend it, you can't invest it, you can't do anything with it until you melt that ice. And you melt it by turning it into throughput. And finally, there's operational expense. This one's pretty straightforward. It's all the money you have to spend to keep the lights on and the wheels turning. It's the cost of running the whole machine that hopefully turns that frozen inventory into warm, liquid cash. Throughput. So when you put it all together, you get this beautiful, simple framework for every single decision you make. The goal is always the same. Push throughput up and push inventory and operational expense down. Anything you do, any new project, any change, you just ask, does it help us do that? If the answer is yes, you're probably on the right track. All right, we know how to keep score now, so let's open up the toolkit. What's the actual action plan? This is where the 5 focusing steps come in. It's a simple, repeatable process for driving continuous improvement. Okay, so this cycle is the real engine of TOC. Let's walk through it. Step 1, identify the constraint. Find that one weakest link. Let's say it's a particular machine. Step 2, exploit it. This means you squeeze every last drop of performance out of that machine without spending any money. Don't let it sit idle during lunch breaks, make sure its maintenance is perfect, that kind of thing. Step 3, subordinate. This is huge. Everybody and everything else in the entire system now has one job. Make sure that constraint machine is always running perfectly. Then, step 4, if it's still the constraint after all that, you elevate it. Now you can spend money, maybe buy a second machine. And step 5, the most important one, repeat. You go back to step 1, because as soon as you fix one bottleneck, I promise you, another one will pop up somewhere else. It never stops. So that subordinate step, that sounds a little abstract, right?
how do you actually get an entire system to serve one single point? Well, there's a really elegant tool for this. Let's do a quick deep dive on something called drum buffer rope.
Drum Buffer Rope, or DBR for short, is basically a scheduling system. But it's a brilliant one. The whole point is to get the entire factory, the entire system, marching to the beat of its slowest part, which is, of course, our constraint. It's all about creating a smooth, balanced flow that's based on what your constraint can handle, not just pushing work in as fast as you can. So how does it work? It's got three parts. First, the drum. That's your constraint. It sets the beat, the pace, for the entire operation. No one works faster than the drum. Second, the buffer. This is a small, carefully managed pile of work in progress that sits right in front of the constraint. Its only job is to make sure the drum never, ever has to wait for work. It's a protective cushion. And finally, the rope. The rope is a signal that's tied from the buffer all the way back to the start of the process. It basically tells the first station, hey, release a new piece of work into the system, but only when a piece of work leaves the buffer. This pulls work through the system instead of pushing it in, which prevents a massive pileup of inventory.
Okay, that's great for a physical machine. But what about those tricky policy constraints we talked about earlier? You can't exactly put a buffer in front of a bad company rule. For these, we need a different set of tools. We need a logical way to think our way out of the problem, and that's where the TOC thinking processes come in.
It all starts with this one simple question: what needs to be changed? Now, this sounds easy, but it's not. The temptation is to list every single complaint, every little problem, but that's not the goal. Think about going to the doctor. You tell them you have a fever, a cough, a sore throat. Those are all symptoms. A good doctor doesn't just treat the symptoms. They dig to find the one underlying infection that's causing all of them. That's what we have to do here. And the main tool we use for this is called the current reality tree. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a logic diagram. You start by listing all those bad things happening. The symptoms, we call them undesirable effects. And you map out the cause and effect links between them. If you do it right, all of those lines will eventually lead you down to one single core problem, the root cause of all your headaches. So once you've found that core problem, the next question is obvious. What do you want to change it to? And make it better isn't a good enough answer. We need a clear, specific, detailed picture of what the future should look like. To get there, we've got a couple more tools. The future reality tree lets you build out your proposed solution and see what effects it will have. It's like a stress test to make sure your great idea doesn't create 5 new problems. Then there's something called the evaporating cloud, which is an amazing tool for tackling those stubborn conflicts that always seem to be at the heart of bad policies. Okay, last step. Because let's face it, a brilliant idea with no plan to execute it is, well, totally worthless. So the final question we have to answer is, how are we actually going to make this change happen? And you guessed it, there are tools for that too. Things like strategy and tactics trees. These are all about creating the detailed, step-by-step roadmap. They help you break down that big, ambitious vision into small, concrete actions. It's literally the plan that gets you from where you are today to that much better future you design. Okay, so let's bring this all home. Why should you care about any of this? What's the big payoff? Well, the benefits of focusing on your constraint aren't just small tweaks. They are massive, system-wide improvements. I mean, look at this. The results speak for themselves. When you find and manage that one weakest link, you don't just fix one little thing. You unleash the potential of your entire system. We're talking about more profit, way more throughput. We're talking about getting things done faster, shrinking lead times, and freeing up huge amounts of cash that were tied up in inventory. And maybe best of all, you create a culture where everyone is pulling in the same direction, focused on the one thing that truly matters. So here's the bottom line. You now have a completely new lens for looking at your business. You can see it not as a bunch of separate parts, but as one single system. You have the tools to find the one thing, the only thing that's really holding you back. So my question for you is pretty simple. Now that you know how to spot them, what's the first bad policy you're going to go after?